Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, and good afternoon, and aloha, and hola. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. I'm your host, Luis Jimenez. I'm running solo today because it's a very special edition. If you notice today, we started the show on a Thursday. We don't do shows on Thursday. That's why you need to ring the bell. That way you don't miss any programming like this that happens when we're off schedule. Don't forget, like, subscribe, ring the bell, support us through the Patreon. All the links are down below. We're not going to get into that too much today, but I will say, lastly, thank you to the sponsor who's here, BlueMountainChronicles.com. Want to say thank you to DOS Tapes, although this is not DOS Tapes that's playing. This is our homeland mother music, royalty-free Cuban music, as I like to call it. And after this, at 4 o'clock, we're going to be going to the Singularity Lab and going live with Michael Mataluni and John Greenwald, so don't miss it. So without further ado, let's have some fun today. Let's talk about Cuba. Let's talk about Miami. Let's talk to a man that we normally never get to see this side of. I'm super excited about today. Let me first introduce my father, Luis Jimenez.
Hello.
UFO Dad. Became a huge hit on the show during the big phone home. Hold on a second. The first big phone home. There we go. I was just trying to lower the music here, Pop. Sorry. Also the sponsor of the show. So if you're into saltwater fishing, go visit his website, BlueMountainChronicles.com. Now, the next man I'm going to introduce, you all know, legend of the UAP community and also American hero, Mr. Lue Elizondo.
Hey, hola, ¿cómo está?
¿Cómo está, señor?
Aquí, tranquilo, todo bien.
Tranquilo. Okay, so I figured, since we have the three Luises here now, and our very special guest for the day is Papa Lue Elizondo Sr., and I would love for you to introduce your dad.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So my inspiration, man, the guy who I owe much to, the man who taught me the difference between being a normal human being and being a good man. And sometimes being a good man means making hard choices. This is a man who spent some of his life in prison, in Castro's jails, and was a revolutionary in the Bay of Pigs. And I remember as a young kid growing up listening to stories of the revolution and how he fought against Batista, and then the family was being persecuted. And then, long story short, he joins the revolution, winds up in jail. And, as a kid, I hear these stories of, the only part in Cuba he wasn't allowed to go to was this place called Guantanamo Bay. And he winds up going into the Bay of Pigs and being part of the revolution. And, here I am one generation away later. The only place now that, because we're in exile, the only place I can go is Guantanamo Bay. And I'm on the other side of the jail cell, right? So remembering these stories of what it's like to be a political prisoner and to be a prisoner and all going through my head, and at the same time trying to do my job while at the same time hold on to my humanity. And that's really in large part because of the incredible upbringing I had from my mother and my father. My mother, God bless her soul, she's no longer with us, but my father, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who was in the Brigade 2506 and taught me how to be a human, how to make sure you give back more than you take, is right next to me. And my father, my hero, Lue Elizondo, so senior. So Pops, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here sharing this moment with my son and his friends, your friends, now my friends. While it's true that I did certain things in the past, the reality is that Louis has made it come a reality. In everything that I hope I could have ever done, he has surpassed it. As a son, as a father, as a friend, as a neighbor, as a boss, as an employee, as a patriot, he is number one.
So I paid him to say that, clearly.
He just gave me chills, man. He just gave me chills.
No. Look, truth be told, he's got bills to pay, and I've sometimes, hey, Pop, say a few nice things about me, and I'll I'll take care of you. Listen, by the way, guys, just in celebration of the 4 Luises and Cubans, right? I just want to highlight, first of all, I don't know if you have your cafecitos, but we have our cafecitos ready to go. Both Pops and I have our cafecitos. We have our cigars, and we're ready to make this an incredible show for you. This is a side that most people don't see me. They usually see me in a black T-shirt and a baseball cap, and a little bit on the militant side. But no, I'm going into my roots, and here we are, man. 4 Cubans, 4 Luises, having a conversation on your show.
Well, here's what's cool is we've all gotten an extra button down today.
Yeah.
Which is, I got my gold chain. I'm ready to go.
Okay, Luis, no underwear either, man. So we're ready to rock.
Oh, yeah. Never. Underwear's for the week as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Okay, so... oh my God, Jack Ryan, $100 donation. Luis is the #1 best thing in America, not number 66. Okay, we'll get to that. Because that was actually pretty cool. And I mean, I never expected you to be popping People magazine, but hey, man, it's official. You're an influence now. So
I was probably more apt to be on America's Most Wanted, I think, than People magazine, and not for the right reasons, but I guess
Hey, well, it is what it is. Okay, so let's real quick, because I know we've got a lot of new folks here that don't know the history of Cuba. They don't understand that Cuba has never been free. It's always been in the hand of people who control the people on the island, and so, we talked about, you briefly touched on the Bay of Pigs, and I guess let's give a quick, if we can, either Luis Sr., Luis Elizondo Jr., or even my dad, anybody who wants to pop into this and sort of give us a quick history lesson on Cuba and sort
Luis,
of...
can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's let the 2 elders, because those are the guys, they are the, I hate to
they
say
were there.
OG, right? But they are the OG of Cuba. Yeah. Let them start the conversation, because you and I tend to be, this second generation,
right?
Kind of, one foot in both worlds. But really, you and I are only here because of your dad and my dad. Right. And I think it'd be great. If it's okay with you, I'd love to start with your dad, because, I've lived with my dad my whole life. You might find him interesting, but at this point, I'm tuning into other things. So I'd love to hear from Luis Sr., Luis Jimenez.
Yeah.
Por favor. Oye, con mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto. Well, I'm also second generation like you. I mean, I never really lived in Cuba that I can remember. I was a baby when I got to the States. So I've never been to Cuba. So the only thing that I have are pictures, and basically when we lived in Puerto Rico, because I lived in Puerto Rico for a while. And when I was in Puerto Rico came...
¿Qué parte de Puerto Rico?
We were in Arecibo.
Arecibo, yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, we were in Arecibo, and we were in Isla Verde.
Oh, Isla Verde. That's
by the
beautiful.
Airport.
Yeah,
that's where
man.
we started in Arecibo, but Arecibo at the time was very small. There wasn't a whole lot going on there. I was in charge of respiratory and anesthesia services at the regional hospital in Arecibo. So we moved to Isla Verde, which is ellos le dicen área metropolitana, which means the metropolitan area in San Juan, and Isla Verde is part of it. It's right next to the airport.
So next to Condado too, beautiful area.
Yeah, it's very close to Condado, and Ocean Park is in between them. And there, I basically sharpened up a lot of my Spanish because I was teaching and along with being in the hospital and doing the things that I did in my profession that I do. And so Puerto Rico was kind of an experience because technically Puerto Rico was the Cuba that I never had. So it was the only Spanish country that I ever lived in. So I kind of took Puerto Rico as being the country that I never had. So that's the way I look at Puerto Rico. I got a lot of friends there. I do a lot of business there. I've been there for in la Universidad Metropolitana to teach there. And you know, it's Puerto Rico's a cool place to go hang out, man.
So let me ask you,
Wild.
you traded in the pasteles for mofongo and yeah, los
Yeah.
pasteles. You know, you had you traded in the ¿cómo se llama, the little things we used to eat all the time?
Pastelito.
Pastelitos.
Pastelito,
Sí.
yeah.
So yeah. So you
Pastelito.
traded your pastelitos for pasteles and mofongo.
Yeah, the words are different though. Pasteles over there is they make it out of plantains.
Sí, claro. They wrap it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but we don't call that a pastel. We call that a tamales. But we make them out of corn. We don't make them out of green plantains. That's the difference between a Cuban tamale and what they call pasteles over there, which is in the same shape.
Sí.
But instead of making it out of corn, they make it out of plantains.
I remember I used to live in Guaynabo, Bayamón,
Oh yeah.
and Trujillo Alto. And I remember when I was doing some work, I won't go into detail how long time ago. But I remember the food in Puerto Rico was fantastic. And you know what? You know, the Latin community was always, for me, you know, being kind of this kid from exile, very much welcoming. You know, the Latin community, hey man, you know, you come here, we don't care if you're black or white or Asian or Christian or anything, Jewish or anything. You come here, man, and we celebrate everybody. And it was something that I, you know, in San Juan in particular, I have really good memories of Condado and all the places there, Isla Verde, everywhere.
Yeah, in Isla Verde, there's a place called Casa Cuba, which is a Cuban club. And the Puerto Ricans, the Puerto Ricans call it La Tubería, which is funny as hell because it means, you know how the Cubans talk. Oh, cuando yo estaba en Cuba, tuve esto, tenía aquello, you know. Well, they call it La Tubería. That's what they call it for short. But that place, I believe, is still there. We used to live. Lewis was born in Miami. He was born at Mercy Hospital, and at the time when he was born, we were in Puerto Rico, but we needed the doctor that we wanted to use is in Miami. So Lewis was born at Mercy Hospital in Miami, and then he was with us in Puerto Rico right up until 1984, when we moved back to Florida. And ever since I went back to Florida, we've been in Broward County. We actually moved to Miramar first, and then I was in Lauderdale by the Sea, and then pretty much before I moved here to Utah, I was in Pompano Beach.
Oh, okay.
So that's my history as far as where I've lived. I grew up in Miami,
yeah.
I grew up in Miami. I grew up in the Alapata-Wynwood area.
Sure.
I did not grow up in Little Havana. I grew up in Alapata-Wynwood, which was further north. It's a beautiful area now. Wynwood is really up and coming. But when I moved there, when I was a kid, I-95 was not there. That's what a lot of people don't understand. I-95 wasn't there. So after they built I-95, that neighborhood kind of took a turn right along the highway. So it became really, really bad. And there's a guy by the name of Lewis, who I met, and he owns Wynwood Brewery. They make a beer. They make great beer, by the way. And I met him at one of the beer fests up in Jupiter and in Florida. And when I was there, I was like, I went there to taste the Funky Buddha peanut butter and jelly beer, the no crust. I went there, and as I was heading towards that booth, I saw this beer called Wynwood. So I got the peanut butter and jelly. My wife was with me, so I stepped back, and then I said, "Hey, what are you guys all about? I've never heard of you." I said, it's really funny because I grew up in a neighborhood in Miami called Wynwood, and that's how I met this guy. His name is Lewis too, by the way, but he's from Puerto Rico. And so I was over there. I mean, Wynwood has changed dramatically. It's a beautiful area. It's very artsy. There's a lot of good restaurants, and it's amazing. It's really amazing what they've done there. I'm very proud of the folks that live there because they've done an amazing job. And then I lived in Alapata for a while, and Alapata is basically, most of the people that live in Alapata today, they're from Santo Domingo. They're Dominican. There's a big Dominican community there. San Dominicano, right. So that's where I grew up. I went to school at St. Peter and Paul in Miami. That was grade 1 through 6, I believe. And then I went to Belen Jesuit, which is a prep school that used to be on Southwest 8th Street. and 7th Avenue. Yeah, 7th Avenue, right there as you get really close to Brickell. And that's a school that school is actually it's a Jesuit school. They're Jesuit priests, and in Cuba there was a Belen Jesuit, and my dad went to that school in Cuba, and Fidel Castro went to that school in Cuba too. Believe it or not, if you don't, that's wild. But yeah, he went to that school. So one of the priests there at the school, he was a friend of my dad's. The Jesuits are a little bit different, you know. They're my dad was an engineer. He had a degree in electrical and civil engineering, and this priest, he was also an engineer. They were in school together. So, because all the Jesuits have some kind of profession. They're doctors, engineers, physicists, biologists. They just don't go to a seminary. They actually have degrees. So I went to that school, and then in 11th grade, I moved. We moved out to Westchester, which is out in West Miami, on the other side of Marco Rubio's district. And I graduated from Miami Coral Park, which is the rival school of South Miami, and that's where Marco went to school. You know, so that's pretty much my history of where I grew up in Miami. So the Cuban influence, you know how it is in Miami, you know, the Cuban influence is big. There's the food, the restaurants, you know, everything, you know, so I kind of miss the food because I couldn't get a plantain here if I tried.
Yeah,
crazy here. Yeah. I mean, it's insane.
No, I gotta go to Calle Ocho, man. If I want a churros or a mamey shake something like that, I gotta go to 8th Street, man. That's the only place I'm gonna get it, you know.
Exactly.
To Las Palmas or something like that. You know, I remember my father as a kid taking me down there and having incredible memories, and always taking me to the Eternal Flame. Most of your audience won't know this, but there is this monument. Yeah, in right
Bayfront
there.
Park.
Yeah, Bayfront Park. And,
the Kennedy Memorial.
The Kennedy Memorial, man, the Torch of Freedom, baby. And you know, my father used to always go there, and I'll let him speak for himself. But you know, as a kid, I can only speak for me. But I didn't know at the time, you know, what that meant. Other than I would see my father go there every time we went. He religiously would go to a flower shop and buy flowers.
Yeah. And
he would take me to the Eternal Flame, and he would say, you know, Chino, we've lost a lot of good friends there for something that, you know, meant a lot to a lot of people, and I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for some of those people. And as I got older, and later on in my life, I began to understand a little bit about that. You know, as a kid at 7, 8 years old, you don't really internalize what that is, and you're surrounded by the Latin community, the Cuban community, and you know, everybody, you know, hey, how are you? What's going on? Hey, come by. And but that was always for me a somber moment, and I never understood until I got a little bit older really what that was about, and I didn't know until really I even got a little older than that what the participation of people in the Bay of Pigs and the result of that, why people had to leave Cuba in the first place, and what set those circumstances. And so, you know, I get it. As for my experience in Miami was always very positive. You know, I consider Miami my second home. You know, it's probably most Cubans, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But you know, it is what it is. And I have a lot of the places that you're mentioning, Coral High and all these other places, I know very well. I you know, as a kid growing up and spend a lot of time in those areas.
Yeah. Miami is a very resilient city. There's a lot of Cubans. I mean, there's Cubans in Miami. There's Cubans in West Palm Beach because my uncle used to live there. And that was because of Atlantic Sugar, which was out close to the Everglades.
I remember.
And he was in the sugar industry. And there's a lot of Cubans also. My cousin Henry and some of my cousin, they lived in Passaic, New Jersey, but Union City, Elizabeth, Clifton, Patterson, West New York, Weehawken, that's all Cuban there. And I remember the first time that I ever saw snow. It's the weirdest thing because I was in Union City at there's a street there called Bergen Line, which is the main drag. And at the end, there's a theater called the Tony Theater. This was back in the disco days. And I'm sitting there, and it's snowing, and it's like snowing in Cayocho because you got the bakeries, the restaurants, the pastelito, cangrejito. You got this stuff all over the place, and there's snow all over the place. It was really bizarre, but I spent a lot of time up there as well. I spent time in Union City and Passaic. I had a girlfriend up there. Spent so I know New York, the city, pretty good, I'd say. And but that area up there of Union City and all that, I know it well. And there's a lot of Cubans there.
Well, listen, Luis, since you were teaching, let me just say this. Thank you for your service. A wise man once said long ago that the greatest nation is but one generation away from utter ruin. Yeah. And what he meant by that is if you don't invest in the next generation, it doesn't matter how much gold or natural resources you have. It doesn't matter the technological potential you have as a nation. It's all for nothing if you don't invest in the next generation. So as a teacher, thank you as an intellectual. You guys have probably one of the most difficult jobs out there. And I just wanted to say thank you. If it wasn't for some of the great educators out there, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be who I am today. So in large part, thank you very much for what you do.
Yeah, I am not a school teacher per se for kids. I taught at the college level. I taught
just as important.
Medical stuff. I taught respiratory, pulmonary medicine, cardiology, stuff like that.
Hey, man, knowledge is knowledge.
My specialty.
You know what? Some could argue that teaching people how to save a life is equally as important.
Yeah. Very important. Yes.
Well, let's real quick, just for everybody who's coming into the chat, coming into the show, you're catching us midstream here. Just want to let you know what's going on. Luis Jimenez, welcome to the show. I've got my dad, Luis Elizondo, and his father, Luis Sr. We're talking about Miami, Cuba, growing up in a Cuban culture. And we're about to get into the history of Cuba with Luis Elizondo Sr. because I really love to hear his perspective on the struggles in his home country coming here and sort of what he's seeing today. And does that give him hope? Because I know there's a lot of stuff right now happening in Cuba, primarily cell phones. Seems like cell phones are the thing that are now may liberate this island. Who knows? We'll see. So welcome. Thank you for being here. If you guys are asking questions in the super chat that have directly to do with UAPs, they're probably not going to be answered today. I do have a couple questions, but I'm going to save them for the end, and they're not for Lue Elizondo. They're for Senior, because I did promise Lue that we're not going to have any UAP talk, and I'm going to keep that promise, but we are going to ask Papa one or two questions. So Luis Elizondo Senior, sir, please, I open the floor to tell your story.
Thank you for the opportunity that you offered me to share a little bit of where I come from and who I am. It might be on three segments that I want to address to you. One it is to be what made me be Luis Elizondo. I was born in a bubble, in the sense that there were no real needs. I had clothes, I had food. If I needed shoes, there were shoes. We were not upper rich, super rich, but we had a good, comfortable life. My father was a professional and my uncle was a professional. They were doctors, they were in the professional business, and we were doing okay. And living in suspension, in that bubble, I really had no needs, no wants. Everything was taken care of. Big loving family, very honest, very principled, very intellectual. But it came a time where the bubble let me see through a different type of life, where people were not living that comfortable. Of course, going back into the bubble, it was easy to overlook, but the images became sharper and sharper with time until I realized that there was something wrong. The rest of the society was not living in a bubble. The bubble was for me and people that I knew, my family, but there was something wrong. And the crisis came when I realized that something was not working in society. And that set me in a course of conflict with my group. And so it happens that without even trying, I had to make a decisions, and I did, that put me in conflict with the regime at the time, which was Batista.
Mm.
Things happen, and things go as they usually go. And there I was. The revolution had won. The people that I feel sympathy for won. There were people that were fighting the same beast from a different column, for a different mountain, but there again, we had won. And it so happened that I had conflict with that system also when didn't understood and it was not explained. I was politically naive at the time, and I rejected them because what I consider was a betrayal of the revolution, which put me in conflict. I left the country, came to the States, went back as a volunteer in the invasion, and the rest is history. Now, the second part is after I was released from prison, the best way that I can explain it is a parable. Just think of a person that comes to a strange land, doesn't necessarily know the language or the custom, but he was told to make a living, go ahead, don't break the law, pay your taxes, and you will have no problem. And this fellow started walking up the road, not really knowing where he was going. There was no direction, there was no demands on him, just live your life. And he started walking on the road for a while, and he got hot, and he was hungry. And he saw a fellow standing by the side of the road, and he asked him, "Hey, I'm hungry. What can I eat?" And the guy looked at him kind of, "You must have just got out of the boat, didn't you?" He says, "Look, there's a restaurant on the road." And okay, the guy said, "Thank you." And he started walking, and the guy said, "Hey, do you have money?" "No, I don't." He said, "Well, you better have money if you want to buy food." He said, "How you get money?" He says, "Well, you go to work." He said, "Well, where you find work?" I says, "I don't know, man. You find your own work and you do what you do and you get money, you're going to eat and do well." And he says, "Well, how I go about it?" And the fellow said, "Look, you see those, on the side of the road, the shovels? Well, grab a shovel and start digging, boy, if you want to have some food." So the guy went over and grabbed a shovel, and he was not used to working with a shovel. So he said, "What do I dig?" "Anywhere you want to dig, it's your choice. You choose wherever you want to dig and whatever you want to do." So the guy walked to a field and started digging. Well, he really didn't know how to handle the shovel, and he didn't know how to handle the rocks, and he was tired, his back ached, but he knew he had to eat. So he started digging, and it was hard work. But soon he realized how to push a shovel with his feet to make the dirt out. And he knew how to avoid the big rocks so he could get around it and keep digging. And he started digging, and he kept on digging, and then it started raining, but he kept on digging, and then winter came, and it was cold, and he kept on digging, and he kept on digging, and he kept on digging. And one day a guy came over and looked at him working, and he says, "Hey, man, you want to sell your ditch?" And he said, "What ditch?" And he says, "Yeah, the ditch you're digging." And the fellow with the shovel looked back, and he said, "Is that my ditch?" He said, "Yeah, you build it. If you want to sell it, I'll sell it." So the guy sold the dish. And then he did all right. And then life kept on going. Well, My love was similar to that. I just dig and I dig and I dug and I dug until I had a ditch and things looked better, and I learned how to work the shovel, and then I knew how to dig the ditch and things became easier, and there it was. And then he had a relationship and a miracle happened and his son was born. And that changed the perspective of his life.
Hmm.
And it so happened that that little boy, that little child, developed in what is today his pride and joy. There's no big secret. It could happen to many people in our country.
Hmm.
They didn't really give me anything, but gave me everything. And I am very grateful for that opportunity that has been afforded not only to me, but to many foreigners to come here not knowing what to do. And some might have an education, that was not in my case. And that's what I am now. And then that son that developed and is what it is today, and he would have been loved anyhow.
Hmm.
But it so happens that through his personal efforts, he grabbed his shovel and he dug his ditch and he dug it straight, and now he is with a shovel in his hand, ready to keep on digging.
Hmm.
It's very simple, really. As far as the Cuban situation, I pose this to the Cubans here in Miami. Wouldn't it be great if you work from Monday to Friday and Friday night you says, hey, honey, let's go to Cuba for the weekend. And you hop in a plane from Miami and 55 minutes away, you're in Cuba, having a great weekend, enjoying the place, coming back on Monday and keep on working. The situation there, in my perspective, requires diplomacy. We have tried many other avenues and they haven't worked as good as we hoped. So maybe it's a time for a different alternative to really let freedom right. And it's really up to us, and it's really up to them too. So I don't know if that really shows any
Yeah, I
reflection.
I think I think it's the American dream in a story.
Luis,
Um,
I think you're right. It is the
yeah.
American dream. And I'll tell you, I think the Cuban situation isn't just a Cuban situation. I think it's a global situation. I think there's other countries that have the same issue. Look, tyranny by any other name is still tyranny. It doesn't matter if it's Cuba or any other country. People have the right for self manifestation, for self realization, and ultimately, it's up to the people to decide what they want and what they want to do. We as a country have to respect that. But at the same time, if people are being suppressed, and again, whether it's Cuba or name any other, North Korea or any other country,
Right.
then that's a problem. And I think it's a problem that we should try to look at diplomatically. I think we need to try to look at it internationally. I think it's something that we should certainly pay attention to. I was raised as a kid. What my father won't say because he's being on his best behavior.
Yeah.
But I'll say it. I was raised with the understanding that one day we were going to go back and liberate Cuba.
Right.
That's the world I grew up in. Brigade 2506 and all of a sudden Alpha 66 and you've got, at 7 years old, you're learning how to disassemble an AK-47 and an M16. Not that that's bad or good. It's just, it is what it is. And, that day never came. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. I went to school at University of Miami with some of the kids from Brothers to the Rescue. I grew up in that environment. And, some of the political measures that we used to try to change the situation in Cuba didn't work. And, it's funny listening to my father because he's as a kid, I remember him telling me these stories. One day, if you have more time, you got to hear it. Stories of him training in the jungles of Cuba to overthrow Batista, and the crazy, incredible stories that he was part of. And then later on, Castro says, "You know what? I'm going to go communist." And my father says, "Hey, that's not what we signed up for, Jack. You know, you said freedom. We want to be away from tyranny." And of course, Castro is looking at between the U.S. and Russia at the time, and makes a decision. He's going to side with, one side, and the rest is history. But, my father winds up going to Guatemala, training, and then coming on the USS Houston. Ship gets rocketed, swims to shore. They're under attack. There's no air support other than a couple CIA guys who decide to, by the way, for the record, disobey orders, and they decided not to abandon their brothers. And I've always said, that Cuba may have lost many of her sons that day, but she also lost a few of her brothers, and they were American. And at the end of the day, they sacrificed their lives to do what they thought was right. That sacrifice shouldn't be in vain. Right. And the sacrifice of all Cubans that suffer. Now, the question is, what is the solution? And the solution, I don't think, is necessarily only with a pen or only with a gun. I think we have to be smart about this. I think we really have to look at the situation holistically and what is in the best interest of the Cuban people. And it's not an either or. And I think we need to recognize that. I think this is an issue that is not just a Cuban issue. It is reflective of other people and other governments as well.
That's interesting because my dad always said that Cubans, the difference between a lot of other foreigners that come to this country, the difference between them and Cubans primarily is that Cubans had the intention of going back. Like there was never this, we're staying here, we're building a community here. We're like, we need to train and we're going back and
I think you're right to some degree. I mean, I remember as a kid, right? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, that is true. Absolutely true.
Well, Pop,
no question about it. My dad was very involved in that. And my dad, when he came here, it was a game plan to basically form an army and go back and take the island back from Fidel Castro, because Fidel promised a lot of stuff, okay? That's why people like Camilo Cienfuegos disappeared, Uber Matos, all those people, they were supposed to have elections, and this was supposed to happen, and that was supposed to happen. None of that panned out, all right? So the people that were in Miami at the time, and there was a lot of stuff going on in Miami. You mentioned Alpha 66. I'm familiar with Alpha 66, but there was other stuff that was going on. I can tell you, a lot of stuff. Okay. When I was a kid, I was with my dad. I used to go to with my dad to all of these things. Okay. I've seen things when I was that age that most people haven't seen. I've seen bazookas, flamethrowers. I mean, you name it. I have seen it. And I have fired some of that stuff. Not everything, but I have fired some of that stuff. And I did it when I was very, very young. Okay. A lot of the stuff that happened in Miami that had to do with stuff like that, it didn't really happen at Alpha 66. It happened in these, I don't know, have you ever seen the movie Bronx Tale? Where the kids get together and they form a social club in the middle of New York, and it's like a little place, and they go in there and they hang out. It's Donnie Brasco. It's kind of like an Italian thing. Cuban and Italians are very much the same, except they didn't call it a Cuban club. They call it a municipio, and it was named after different cities in Cuba, okay? And in those municipios, this is where all this stuff went down. Forget about Alpha 66. All the heavy-duty stuff went down in those places. And it was amazing because there was a guy who they used to call him Major. I'm not going to say his name because this guy has kids. He had kids my age when I met him. I met his children. And I don't know what his kids are doing these days. And I don't really know what this guy was doing to begin with. But this guy was the type of guy that when they were firing all that stuff out there, throwing grenades, I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. This was, where FIU is, right?
Of course.
Today, okay. Well, it's a little bit past that on the, a little further in. You pass the Miccosukee Indian village back in the day when
you're
there was
talking
no
about there in the Everglades. I know exactly
there
what
was
you're
no
talking about.
casino there at the time.
I know.
Yeah, so it was way out there, and
There
every
was an
once in a
airfield
while,
too.
every once in a while, whenever all the noise, people were hearing it. I guess the Indians were the ones who called the natives over there, the Tiger family, who actually Donna Tiger and some of her brothers went to school with me at Miami Core Park. The cops every once in a while would show up there, and all this guy did was pull an ID, and they were gone. Okay, I don't know what kind of an ID it was, but they were gone. So all that stuff was happening out there, and
well, Luis, the CIA had one of the largest field stations at the time, right there in Coral Gables, next to University of Miami. Yeah. That's probably I'm not going to say, but probably
that's why I don't want to mention the name, because this guy was a major. They used to call him Major Blank, and I don't know what his kids are doing today.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to mention any names because I don't know what, like I said, I don't know what his kids are doing. A lot of them were my age, which means that they're 63, 64. And if any of their kids decided to follow in their grandfather's footsteps, they're going to be around Lewis's age, depending on what time they had kids. So, but this guy was definitely not just some guy. Okay. So a lot of that stuff that went down over there, and I used to go with my dad to all of it. So I witnessed all of that. I remember that. So it was a time that was a little bit complicated with a lot of different things. I'm
going to put my dad on the spot here, and I'm going to let him, however, to the degree he's comfortable with. But Dad, I remember as a kid coming home, and there were security guards in the house. And there were men with sunglasses, and you'd be having a conversation in our living room with somebody in a suit. And looking back, now knowing what I know, those cars weren't regular civilian vehicles. The people there weren't regular civilians. I'm going to ask you, what was going on?
I know the feeling. I know
no. Well, what I was gonna say. No. Here's what I was gonna say. Boy, have I seen this face before? Have I seen this face before?
There was a fellow that helped tremendously the revolution. At one point, I believe it was Fidel that mentioned that he has saved the revolution, because when there was a point where there was no supplies, the guys showed up with what was needed. After the revolution, the fellow got disillusioned with the revolution, and he was arrested, and he served 30 years in prison. He was released, and he was going around Florida trying to foment some type of support. And somehow I was connected with him, and he came to visit my house and to make presentation. And that was the point that Luis came in, and he saw this commotion, and his name was Uber Matos.
Yep.
That nothing much developed out of that. They are still there, and we're here.
So I'm going to show you guys real quick. I'm going to share with you and your audience. This is the kind of stuff I grew up with.
Wow.
And this is...
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Gusano.
That's right.
Gusano. That's what they called us, worms.
That's right. Volveremos, right?
Yeah, if you left Cuba, you were a worm.
That's right. And so
I wonder if your dad remembers ZigZag magazine.
Sure.
Yes, you remember absolutely. That? Okay.
Yeah,
you know what that it was like?
I loved it.
It was like a cartoon, but in that magazine, okay, every once in a while when we go to these municipios, my dad and people were having conversations about the caricatures in the magazine. In that magazine, there were things that were drawn that were actually messages. So, clandestine messages
covert
were written
messages,
into
correct.
That magazine. So if you knew what you were looking for, you were getting the message directly from over there, which was crazy stuff. I mean, This was insanity. A lot of the stuff. So yeah, it's.
Well, do you remember the days of Radio Mambi? The same thing.
Radio Mambi,
like
Radio
grande.
Mambi. Yeah, man. There was, that was, being broadcast at 200,000 watts for a reason.
Yeah,
you don't need that.
Cuba.
You don't need that to broadcast in just Dade County. That's that's an awfully big electronic footprint, right?
Yeah,
that's a big AM station.
And that was done for a reason, man. I mean, those were interesting times, the 70s and the 80s, and what the intent was to try to figure things out over there.
Yeah, I met a lot of people when I was with my dad. I met Orlando Bosch. His daughter is a pulmonary physician now. She's in Miami, and I met a lot of people. Let's just put it that way. And it was crazy, man. It was crazy stuff going on. But like I told Luis when he was a kid, Cubans are a very unique minority in that sense that when people came from Cuba, they didn't come here to stay. Okay, we came here to form an army and go back and take back the island. And that was everybody's dream. It was my dad's dream. And that was never realized. My dad dedicated his entire life to that right up until about 1979 when he was, in 1979, my dad was about my age. My dad passed away in 2011. He was 96 when he passed away. So my dad is obviously older than your dad. And his entire life he dedicated to that. It was a huge sacrifice. My dad didn't even own a house when he passed away. Okay. So he spent his whole time dedicated to this. And we spent years going with him to all these places. Yeah. So that's how I'm very familiar with all of this. It wasn't that I was a participant in doing all that, but that's how I'm familiar with all of that. And it was a real crazy time in Miami there for a while, and then things kind of slowed down. And a lot of people believe that things in Cuba ended after they killed my president, President Kennedy, who happens to be my favorite president. I love President Kennedy, and CIA operations in Cuba never ended. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if today some of that stuff's still going on. I don't know, but operations in Cuba were around for quite a long time, into the 70s, definitely. And I know that they were. There was a lot of Brothers to the Rescue. There's a lot of things that are mixed in there that a lot of people, are not aware of, or I didn't have firsthand knowledge of any of that. But by the way that the talk was going and everything else, you kind of get the gist of what's going on. So, but it was a very interesting thing with Cuba. Everybody wanted to go back, and those of us that got there very young, like I did, we just kind of got Americanized. People ask me, I'm an American citizen. I don't, my heritage is Cuban. Yeah. But, I spend my entire time in the States. I was never in Cuba. Yeah. So I relate to my people, but I don't relate in the same way that my dad did, because my dad grew up there. He went to school there, and he was involved in the 40s. He did some work for the American government. So he was a veteran, not a wartime veteran, but he had Champus. The insurance, that's basically what he had. He never used it. And my dad, he was working with Standard Oil, because he was working for Standard Oil, and Standard Oil had a project back, I think, in 40 something. And my dad and his team, they were building these parts for these generators. My dad had no idea what the hell the generators were for, but he said, those are generator parts. I just don't know why they want them so big, but that's what he did, and that's how he ended up getting the vet status with, not wartime, but the insurance, Champas. They used to call it Champas, right. And so that was the involvement. So when my dad came to Miami, he already had contacts, and they were training people in Miami, with all the grenades, this, that, the other, rifle grenades, all kinds of stuff. And they were training people to form the army, and that's the part that my dad was involved with. So because we're already here, we were already living in Miami and Florida at the
Well,
time. So
real quick, because we've got about 6 minutes left.
Ooh.
So I know time flies. So we have to do this again because I really want to get into the stories of Lue Elizondo Sr. because I think there's a lot of sacrifice and maybe some things that I don't know. You know, I would obviously let him decide what he wants to discuss because I'm sure there's a lot of painful memories in those things as well. But it's important that this guy made it. This guy made it, and we're all here because of people like him. So if I had a couple more questions, they're all directed for Lue Elizondo Sr. And the first is, if you had anything to say to not only the American people, but the Cuban people that may hear this, you know, they've got cell phones now. There is some
No pressure, Dad.
no pressure. No pressure. And listen, you say whatever the hell you want. This is a free country. You don't have to you know, to limit yourself in your words.
Yeah, I understand. Let me put it this way. You have two persons that you are very much attached to. One is for memories of childhood, of homeland, and the other one is for the opportunities that afford you to grow up and be a person and take charge of your life and take it as far as you want to, which is invaluable. It's a matter that you cannot put a measure to. And all of a sudden, you see these two people fighting each other. And your loyalty is for both of them. You're not going to take sides unless it's an abuse on one side that is so drastic that makes you reject it completely. So we have a conflict that could be so very easily resolved if these two people sit down and talk to each other, resolve the problem, and problem is gone. But somehow we can't get to that point. Maybe it's the resentment of years of whatever happened, but it's time that we face the reality that we must find a common ground so we stop arguing and accusing one another and direct that energy into solving a problem, which is what we in this society are great at. We can pinpoint a problem, we can break it down, analyze it, find a solution, implement it, and solve the problem. What is keeping us from doing that?
Right.
We have tried what we have tried. We all know about it. We have heard exactly.
Are you hopeful?
The conflict has been tried to resolve, and yet somehow we still have the problem, and that problem reflects on the rest of the continent. We have a huge market at our doorstep. And somehow something is stopping us from developing programs that it could be beneficial for everybody. Nobody lose.
Right.
How are we going to do it?
So, Luis, you had a question. Were you going to say something there?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, well, how do you see hope? Do you see it? Do you see those things starting to happen, I guess, especially within the last week here? I mean, we've had protests and people speaking out in Miami. I know my girlfriend was just there. All of her work was literally stopped because the streets were just packed with people. And then you've got people in Cuba right now. And like, I keep going back to the cell phone, but the cell phone is a wonderful tool to spread the message. And they're up, they're moving, they're chanting in the streets, they're demanding change. So, I mean, we've seen this before, but do you think this time might be a little different?
Well, yes, it could be different in the loudness of the protest. But when you really analyze what the protest is all about, it's because they don't have enough resources to enrich their life.
Right.
And makes you wonder why, because Cubans are industrious people everywhere, any place in the world that they land, they find a way to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? What is stopping them from doing it? Well, the embargo is one way to make people very miserable because they cannot access the thing that they want and they long for and they deserve.
Right.
Maybe if we soften up a little bit, we might be able to gain something out of it. And with that gain, if we invest it wisely, we can double the gain that both sides can benefit.
Right.
Could that be the answer?
It sounds
I
pretty
think
good
so.
to me. It sounds pretty good to me.
That's the answer.
And if,
There's no
and if
question in my
basic,
mind.
I mean, it doesn't require rocket science to figure that out.
Yeah.
These people are pissed. They are hungry. They deserve it. And maybe there should be somewhere, and it's through diplomacy.
Right.
This doesn't mean that we're going to give out any of our principles or we're not going to become the pansies of anybody, but we are solving a problem, and that's what we're good at.
I'll jump in real quick because I know
Yeah.
we're out of time now. But
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity. There's so much talent in Cuba, and frankly,
So
all
much.
of Latin America. You know, we tend to look at the south of the border as being over there. But
Right.
once you take the lines away from a globe, you realize we're all connected. We're all Americans, whether you're North American, South American, Central American. We're all brothers and sisters.
Right.
So wouldn't it be great if we figure out a way to really collectively all work together and solve our problems collectively? And the Cuban problem is our problem, whether we like it or not. It's everybody's problem.
Right.
And we have an opportunity if we're smart about it to help fix that problem and fix that problem long term, not just short term, not just politically, but from a humanitarian perspective, really make a difference. They want help, whatever that help is. They want to feed their family. They want opportunity. They want medicine.
Right.
They want access to the things we have.
They want an inch.
Right.
They want an inch so they can make a couple hundred yards out of it.
I think they want a centimeter. I think they'd be happy with that.
I agree. Because
the Soviet Union fell, and how did it fall? It fell with freedom.
Hey, listen, the moment
That's
you
all that
introduce
it took.
Cadillac and Burger King and Big Macs, you're done. As a tyranny, you can't last because the people get a taste of that and they said, hey, baby, this is a lot better than that crap you're trying to push down my throat.
Well, that's
At the
part of
time
why
when all that was going on. I really honestly thought, and I told my dad, I said, look, Cuba can't be the only one left.
Yeah.
Okay. I was pretty sure that Reagan was going to deal with that, but he couldn't deal with it because in Miami, as you know, the embargo is a huge thing, and that has really been a huge problem in resolving this issue. When you say that you're pro against lifting the embargo, trust me, on Southwest 8th Street, you're going to get a lot of shit about that.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah. They're going to be not very happy with you.
That's where we're at. And I think that has hurt a lot. There's been some really bad leadership coming from Miami as well. I can think of a few names that I don't even want to mention, but I can think of a few. And that has been a real block to this. And I think that had they lightened up, we wouldn't be having this conversation because, all the countries of the Iron Curtain, Berlin, East versus West Berlin, Romania, everywhere, all of that stuff fell. Okay. And so did the Soviet Union. And, but for some reason, man, we lost that opportunity there, which would have been the time to do it. In my view, that would have been the time to do it.
Well,
instead we got the Mario boat lift.
Yeah. Well, look, I've got one. That's what I love about Disneyland in China, because I think eventually that's gonna change that. It may take 20 or 40 years, but
McDonald's
Disneyland in China, this is a good thing. Yeah. So we're out of time, but I'm definitely gonna ask this question because I was dying to ask this question. So, Mr. Elizondo Sr., your son is on a mission. I'm sure you're aware of his mission. I wanted you to comment on this because there's a lot of folks here in this community and outside of it who are accusing your son of not being an honest man. And I want to hear from his father's perspective. Who is Lue Elizondo, and is his mission justified? Is it a worthy mission?
Yes, very much so. And it's a natural development of his personality, who he is, who he was as a child, his candor, his sympathy, his yes. It sometimes I wonder if I am happy he's doing it, because it's a controversial program that he started. But I'm very proud of him. He's a good man, he's a kind man, he's considerate, and he's got the courage and the valor to stick to it. Yeah, he's a real thing. And
Thank
believe
you.
me, I've seen quite a few people out there, but
Yeah.
he's a real thing.
And let me ask you this: do you believe in the phenomenon? Do you believe what he's saying is a real thing?
Well, I have never witnessed it myself, but the fact that he has given proof of what he's doing, the problem that he's honest about it, it makes me understand that there is something. He is not saying what it is. All
Right.
he's saying is, we got a problem.
Right.
There
Right.
is something that we don't know what it is, and it should be addressed. And it's finally being addressed because of his personal sacrifice.
Yeah.
He put on the line a lot that very few people will do. After working so many years, put everything on the line and said, this has to be addressed. And if it is not be addressed, then I'm knowing my work and I'm going to do it on my own. Uh,
Well.
very few people will do that. You might do it when you're 18, you might do it when you're 25, but it comes to an age of reason that is called, where people are very hesitant to go out on the limb, and he goes out where few people dare to go. And that is impressive. And that is unique. And he is right on top of that. It's a moral decision and it's a right decision, and it shows leadership and dedication. What else can I say? That my
I-
little child, the guy that I used to walk down the street and learn him how to ride a bike and talk about the star and the solar system and the values in life, develops into this. How could it be? I am still in awe, and I'm still.
Well, I had very good teachers, as you can see. I had
Yeah.
very good mentors, and my mom and my dad both gave me something that I'm very blessed at.
If I might add one more
Please.
thing, I think he got most of the good things that he has. It came from his mom. She was a good woman, and she was devoted to her child and fought like a lioness for her child, and she was respectful, but somehow the candle of love was blown in the wind. And but maybe he's got what he's got from his mom. With me, maybe some direction and some observation, but it was up to him. He didn't have to do it, and yet he chose to do it. And that is the difference between him and maybe me. Because really, when he was born, the revolution in my heart stopped. My dedication now was my son, and I had to do everything I could to give him the best opportunities I could. And somehow he just got the good parts, not the bad part.
Well, I'll just say I think the dream of any parent is to have their children be more successful than them.
Exactly.
In every way possible. And I think you did a great job. I think you did a really great job. I think this was just an eye-opening, wonderful discussion. I hope that one day be able to do this again, because I know this was hard to coordinate and to get you out there to where you are now. And
either in LA or Miami, Luis.
Yeah.
We got to get all four of us together.
You got it.
And over a cafecito and some cigars.
You got it.
got a
Well,
good one.
I prefer Miami only
I got
because
a good one for you guys.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
We invite everybody. Let's do it out by the park, man.
Well, I
Let's
can
just
tell you-
get everybody to come.
at Mr. Elizondo, I've got some wonderful ideas, and I think there are some really great ways that we can have this conversation in a live setting that people can enjoy. I've got ideas. And I think these conversations. Yeah, please.
The next time,
Yeah.
there might be no barber's hole. So,
No, hey,
I might not behave.
I don't want you to behave. I don't want you to behave. I want to have the conversation, because sometimes these conversations are incredibly difficult to have, but when they happen face to face, usually there's some progress.
yes, but I also like to go once in a while to A Street in Miami and have my cafecito.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't have to worry with these guys.
The views get more extreme, but hey, you're allowed to have those extreme views because you've lived it. So so there it is. But gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough. This was wonderful.
Luis, honor and pleasure, and Luis Senior, wonderful meeting you, sir.
Nice to meet you,
I
too.
saw you, and amazing. Thank you. What a great opportunity. Really appreciate this, sir.
Yeah, it was
Thank you. I appreciate
absolute
it too.
pleasure.
Thank you for your service and everything that you're doing, because I know how difficult that is.
No worries, guys. Gracias por todos.
Gracias.
All right,
And
gentlemen,
it's
we'll
that,
see you
don't
soon.
lose hope.
Mucho gusto. Mucho
Never
gusto
lose hope.
conocerlo.
Never lose hope. I
Igual,
love it.
mucho gusto. Sí,
Mucho
sí.
So, gentlemen, I'll keep the conversation going. I'll bring you out here, and then
Next time, I'm going to tell you about these cigars I got from a friend of mine that are absolutely some of the best cigars you'll ever have.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Elizondo, we'll see you soon, sir.
Ciao, guys.
Take care.
All right. That was an amazing show, an amazing experience. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's a little different than what normally happens with Lue Elizondo, right? You wanted UAP, UFO questions. I want to know about the video. I want to know about this. I get it. I understand 100%. But I think it was high time that someone really tried to learn who this man was, because we're throwing out a lot of things out there about this person, and I hope this was just a really cool window into understanding what's going on and who we're dealing with and what his mission is. So thank you guys, everyone out here, the 300 of you that were here. Please, if you enjoyed the conversation, like, subscribe, share the channel. I've included my Patreon link in the chats here. So please, if you love the show, we do it 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, right here on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, and Tuesdays and Thursdays on the Singularity Lab, which I'm about to go to now. So if you want to see more of this getup, hop over to the Singularity Lab. We're going to be talking to John Greenwald, which I think is happening right now. So that'll be full UAP discussion. We can talk about whatever you guys want there. All right. So lastly, thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. Thank you to Luis Elizondo. Thank you to Luis Elizondo Sr. Thank you to my dad. And yeah, thank you to all of you guys. Seriously, I could not have imagined this going any better. So, and that's all thanks to you. So, appreciate you guys. Until next time, stay safe out there. Peace.